On Friday evening, we had a really big meeting at Altrincham Football Club when the board outlined their short and long-term plans. There are a number of exciting developments, and we're talking to directors Bill Waterson and John Coyne. First of all, Bill, let's come to you. It was a big meeting last night. Plenty of things covered. Summarise, first of all, the ground development plans that you've got.
Well, we wanted to set a vision for where we were going with the ground. There's a lot of short-term things that we could do, but we wanted to make sure they fitted into a long-term view of where we want the club to go. Where we want the club to go is to be something that's in the heart of the community. The stadium is something that attracts people from the town and further afield. And we felt we had to set a long-term goal for what that might look like.
John, can you sort of summarise the ground plans, because they're pretty ambitious and impressive?
Well, I think they are ambitious, and I think the point we tried to make yesterday was we've got to have a vision. If we don't have a vision, then there's nothing to aim for, and I think a few questions from the floor suggested we were quite optimistic, and where would the funding come from, and I think we answered those as eloquently as we could, but also I think we've got to have something to aim for, and I think the idea with the club is to get investment. We mentioned last night we don't want a sugar daddy as such. We'd like to have individuals who buy into what we're trying to do, buy into the vision, who can add additional bandwidth and additional resource and capability and expertise. And if we can find those people and we can get them on board, then it'll all help towards to the vision itself, and see if we can get this 10-year plan into motion.
Now, you're the latest addition to the board of directors, and you've come in with specific responsibilities to develop the commercial side of the football club. So tell us about what you've been up to and your plans.
Well, I think coming into the football club, and I've been speaking to Bill and speaking to Lawrence and Graham for a few months prior to joining the board. And you almost do your own diligence on the board itself and the football club, and they certainly did that on me. But the objectives are quite simple. We've got to get fresh blood into the football club in terms of sponsors and partners. And if we can find those people, and we've had them today, we've had new match sponsors who've never sponsored Altrincham before today. We've had a new match ball sponsor, never sponsored Altrincham before today. And if we can find those people and we can bring that fresh money into the club, then that's clearly the plan from the outset. We've got some great sponsors and we've got some great partners already. I think we've been over reliant on them to some extent in the last few years, and whilst we'll continually be grateful for the support they give, and we'll continue to look after them and give them the exposure that they deserve, I think we've got to bring fresh blood into the club, and that's the idea. We've got to find investment, we've got to find sensible investment, we've got to be sustainable as a football club, we've got to provide a good experience, and that's exactly what we're trying to do, and that's my objective really. It's to find that, and it's to make sure we just move on as a football club bit by bit.
You've come into the football club quite recently. What's your perspective on Altrincham as where it is at the moment and what it could be?
Well, it's interesting because my first involvement was as a match sponsor. So in the last couple of years, we came in as a family and as a business, and we sponsored the football club, match ball sponsor, main match sponsor, and we got to see how the club operates. Always been aware of Altrincham as an ex-player, and played in the non-league, played professionally and played in the non-league. I've always been aware of Altrincham, played against them a number of times. You can see from today, Manchester City, Manchester United both playing tomorrow. The crowd, it's good, but we've got to get those numbers up. But it's a club that has got a lot of ambition, and it's a club that's got a lot of potential, and that's the key. We've got to tap into that potential. The town centre is thriving. The disposable income in the town centre is thriving. We've got to tap into that. We've got to make it a good match day experience. We've got to make it a place that families want to come to. We've got to get the demographic far and wide. We can't just rely on the crowd that's come over the last 2, 3, 4 years. We've got to introduce new blood and new crowds.
And Bill, coming back to you, another exciting development that's happening. It's not a long-term view like the ground, but the introduction of the academy.
Yeah, this to me is a very seriously positive forward development for the club. It's taken us a long time to get this in place. Lawrence Looney's done a lot of work to ensure that we've got this. It will create the player pathway that we talked about in the past, but not yet managed to deliver upon. We will give a proper role for those players who want to come through an education system that brings them through the first team and through the youth team and into the first team. And we think that this will potentially make a significant difference for us. If you think about it in the long term, you only need to have one success from an academy player to pay for the whole academy scheme for many, many years. And we need to find a way to develop those young players who can come and perform on a higher stage for us. And now that we've got something in place around that, it will help us, I think, with our move to full-time status, which, just to reiterate, is still many years away, but at least we have to think about how we're going to get there, and the academy is going to be a very important building block for that.
And Lawrence was talking at the meeting about attracting potential investors, and it's really important that we've got something to attract them with. And with all the stuff that we had on the agenda at the meeting, there's going to be plenty for people who want to invest in Altrincham Football Club going forward.
I think so. I think we've seen today with new people coming in to sponsor the club what's happening on the pitch, and unfortunately we are somewhat restricted by what happens on the pitch. You get results, and there's more of a buzz around the club. Last year and the year before, Phil's done a tremendous job, and I think that drives sponsorship, that drives investment. When you've got a club, and I don't want to single Bradford out today. We've played Bradford and we've beat them, but I know they've had their struggles getting investment into the club, and it tends to be one person who keeps them running. And we want to go the opposite way to that. We want to get people, and we want to get individuals who can come in and see what we're doing and come along for that journey. And it is a journey, and as Bill says, it's nothing that we're going to be able to achieve overnight. We've got to be organic. We've got to be sustainable. We've got to do it bit by bit. We've got to do it the right way. And we I think you said last night, Bill, we're not going to sell the club down the river. It's something that we have to do that looks after the long-term ambitions of the football club.
And one of the things that was stressed was that you'd very much like a new supporters association, which we haven't had at Altrincham Football Club for a number of years.
Yes, that's right. It's very important the fans have a voice in the development of the club. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot that we're going to be launching over the next couple of months and so on. You've seen the plans for the ground and the plans for the academy and so on. We absolutely want the fans to help shape how that looks. It's not about us imposing something or us coming up with an idea in a vacuum. If it doesn't resonate with the supporters, if it doesn't give our fans what they want, then we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't waste time on doing it. The only way we can get a consistent voice from the fans is through a supporters association, and having that clear channel of communication from the 1,266 who are here today, from the 800 or 900 people who come sometimes, to help us define what it is that's most important for us. This is why we need a supporters association, because we want to make sure that we're building a new home at the ground and a new way of working in terms of how we live within the community, and we need that to be defined in part by our supporters, who are really making a difference to how quickly we progress.
And as you mentioned, John, what happens out on the pitch has a big impact, and in terms of the future of what happens out on the pitch, things are going well for the football club at the moment. We're on the back of a couple of good years since Phil Parkinson and Neil Sorville joined Altrincham Football Club in 2017. But of course, potentially the long-term ambition is full-time football, which is a big ask for a football club of this size, but at least we seem to have a plan now.
We do have a plan, and we recognise that there's a surplus in terms of funding for that, and that has to be bridged. We're not going to get there overnight. We don't think that we can just transition into football, full-time football anytime soon. That we need to make sure the revenues are in place. We need to make sure that we're doing the right things by the history and the future of this football club. But absolutely, we want to go down that path, and we have to keep moving forward. We have to attract the right players. We have to match Phil's ambition, and Phil mentioned it last night a couple of times. You know, he is ultra ambitious, and we want him to stay part of this football club, and to do that we have to match his ambition, and we know where that needs to head, and as a board we've got that responsibility, but we have to make sure that we realise that ambition, and we have to do it sustainable.
That's the thoughts of John Coyne and Bill Waterson, summarising the events of Friday night, where there was a very positive and exciting agenda looking at the future of Altrincham Football Club going forward in the next 10 years.